Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that some stories and discussions in this episode of Radiant Resilience may touch on sensitive and potentially triggering topics. These may include themes of religious trauma and estrangement, strict and oppressive religious upbringing, divorce and relationship breakdowns, domestic violence and abusive relationships, mental health struggles, depression, cutting, PTSD, and toxic relationships and codependency. Our goal is to share real life experiences in a respectful and empathetic manner, offering insights into the complexities of the human spirit and the journey towards resilience. However, we understand that some content might be difficult for listeners. We encourage you to prioritize your well being and discretion when deciding to listen. Please remember, this podcast is not a substitute for professional advice or support. If you find yourself needing assistance, we urge you to seek help from qualified professionals or trusted support systems. Your mental and emotional health is important to us. Thank you for your courage and for joining us in a space of understanding and compassion. Welcome back, everyone, to Radiant Resilience. I am really excited for our conversation today. I have with me Janice Formichella. She is a breakup and dating coach and the host of the podcast Breakups, Broken Hearts, and Moving On and Sex, and the Solo Girl. Is that 4 podcasts?
I have 2.
Okay. Can you clarify those names just so I have them correctly for if anybody wants to listen to them?
I hope you do come over and listen. So I have one called Breakups, Broken Hearts, and Moving On, which is about all 3 of those things. And then I have one called Sex and the Solo Girl, which is a little spicier.
Ooh, I like that. All right. We will link those in the show notes too if people want to come over and have a listen. She is passionate about helping people from all backgrounds to beat their breakup, overcome loneliness, and make the end of a relationship the start of a powerful new beginning, which I love that because I've heard so many things about the dating world these days and how difficult it can be. I have known my husband since high school, so I haven't had to date since I was in high school.
Oh, interesting.
But I've had
for better or worse, right?
Yeah, I've had some single friends that have done the online dating. My mom and dad got divorced when I was 19, so my mom did the dating for a little while. Yeah, but welcome, Janice. Thank you so much for being on here.
Thanks for having me.
Why don't you start with, we're going to go back a little bit in time. We'll get back to Janice's breakup dating coaching, but I want to know a little bit more about you and your childhood and kind of what led you into doing this line of work.
As far as my childhood goes, I think we're going to get more into this. I was raised in the LDS faith / was raised Mormon, and that's I think, somewhat interesting thing about me. Because I then left the church 20 years ago or so.
Wow.
And now I actually even run a support group for ex-Mormons. But I'll get a little more into that later. I was raised in the church, and then I ended up going to Brigham Young University, BYU. A lot of people will be familiar with it. And it just really didn't work out, to say the least. I did not enjoy being there whatsoever. I became very depressed, developed lots of mental health issues, and then did drop out, which just absolutely infuriated my parents. After I dropped out, I ended up actually meeting somebody back in Arizona, that's where I'm from, who I'd never been Mormon, fell in love, got married, got divorced.
Oh no.
Yeah, we got married really young because I had been raised and socialized within the confines of the Mormon church. I wanted to get married. We were 21 and 23 when we got married, and people just changed so much in their 30s. And so by the time we were each approaching 30, it had completely unraveled at that point. Getting divorced was pretty much a worst case scenario for me. A lot of my identity was completely tied up in the marriage. And also I had really I was not raised to really be self-reliant as a woman.
Yeah.
And I had really no idea really, yeah, how to take care of just like basic needs and basic things as far as adulting goes.
Mm.
And however, I really got through the divorce quite well because I was living in New York at the time. I had been involved with a women's spirituality community.
Mhm.
And it turned out that for whatever reason, multiple women inside of that community were also getting divorced. And
Oh.
so we all rallied around each other. And I really turned it into an opportunity, yeah, to explore self love for the first time.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
didn't really have an understanding of what that actually meant.
Mhm.
And because I had made such a hard decision to walk away from something that meant everything to me,
Mm.
and realizing that it was the best thing for me, even though I sacrificed a lot to leave that marriage. I came to understand what it meant to love yourself.
Mm.
And I was also involved in the life coaching industry at the time. And I started looking around for a coach that focused on either divorce or breakups.
Oh.
And there was nothing at the
Okay.
time. There's a lot of us now, which I'm really grateful for, that breakup coaching has become a thing, but it wasn't around then. About a year and a half later, I got into my next serious relationship. And being naive and extremely inexperienced in the world of dating and love and all of these things, I fell into or entered into a relationship with this person, only to discover after moving in together what an abusive alcoholic he
Oh
was.
no.
There had been red flags for sure before I moved in with him, including the fact that he wanted me to move in so quickly
Oh yeah.
in Europe.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so within just a few months, he was pressuring me really hard. And I was very excited about the relationship and kind of was swept off my feet in many ways. And so, yeah, I decided to do it. And I think probably within the first weekend of being there, realized that I was in way over my head.
Oh no.
It was very bad. He actually ended up going to jail for domestic battery.
Oh my
And
gosh. From you
mhm,
or from other
yeah,
people?
yes, me. Mhm.
Wow.
And this was about a year and a half into the relationship. And so because of that, I did finally walk away. I had gone back and forth, just like many women do, many survivors, multiple times, sometimes 7 times is considered to be the average. And so then when I finally walked away from that, I sought out support. I didn't cope with it as well as I had my divorce. I
Oh,
was
really?
shattered. I had probably what would be diagnosed as PTSD.
Mm.
Then this time when I went to get support, nobody wanted to really root me on and support me. Everybody was really exhausted with the situation.
That's what
When you're
those
going,
abusers do, right? They separate
mhm,
you from everyone and isolate you. And then when it does come down to it, you're all by yourself because everybody's just had enough. And
they've had
oh,
enough. And a lot of people didn't get along with him, which he didn't care about. I think it made him happy that
yeah.
I was choosing him. He'd have falling out with my friends, and I stayed with him, obviously. And I think he got a lot of satisfaction out of that. And when I got no support, even from my own parents, I then looked around again for breakup coaching, still nothing. And then I decided one day I will become a breakup coach.
Yeah, to help others.
Mhm. Yeah, I ended up going to Australia for 5 years. I live in Denver now. I've been in Denver 4 years. I did live overseas for quite a while. When I was over there, I had some other experiences that helped me become such a great coach, if I do say
Okay.
so myself. Basically, some hitting rock bottom
Mm.
experiences. One in particular, when I was over there trying to get a visa, trying to build a life there, getting into an exploitative work sponsorship situation, having it blow up in my face, losing all my money, my friends, and
Oh
and I
no.
I was able to pick myself up from that and ultimately reflect on my life and how I had gotten myself into so many chaotic situations for so many years. And it helps me now because a lot of people who end up getting either divorced or going through a breakup really do feel like they've lost everything, have a hard time even getting out of bed in the morning. And I know things that definitely work to pull you out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've had an interesting life with a lot of challenges. I think being raised in the Mormon church as a woman, you have a very specific roadmap of how your life, what your life is going to look like. And me not fitting into that, which even as a child, I felt different and I was very curious about the outside world. I wasn't given the same roadmap that a lot of other people have in life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been hard for me to find my way without that. I did in the end. But
Yeah.
yes, it's been a lot of chaos, heartache. I wouldn't necessarily do it all over again.
Yeah.
But, and I'm not grateful for everything I've been through, but I can
Yeah.
definitely say it got me where I am today, at least.
Yeah, for sure. Tell me a little bit more about growing up in the Mormon church then. Let's go back to that a little bit. That roadmap that you're talking about, I'm sure is very common in the Mormon church. And then it must have been scary once you got out and did not have that. So tell us a little bit more about what that roadmap looks like and what you were taught and how everything was and how sheltered you were and all the things.
Yes, when it comes to Mormon households and Mormon parents and an LDS community, I would have been on the far spectrum as far as rigidity and rules and being monitored all of the time and religiosity. It was a very strict upbringing, very enmeshed in the church. I grew up in a little teeny tiny community in rural Arizona and really had all Mormon friends. I went to even a high school that was a charter school run by Mormons.
Okay.
And so there was hardly any non-Mormons in my high school. So it was really all about the church
Yeah.
growing up. And I was, to be honest, pretty unhappy from a young age. We start becoming initiated fully as an adult into the church when you're about 12. You
Oh,
start
wow.
doing certain rites and rituals to have you advance as an adult in various capacities within the religion. And I remember being depressed and not liking it from about that age,
Oh,
even
wow.
though no one I knew had ever left the church. I really had no idea about what it would be like to live outside of the church. I just remember just not liking it and also being really unhappy in the home. I'm the oldest of 7 children.
Wow.
My parents were the most strict on me for sure. I think from what I understand, they've lightened up by now, but it was a lot of pressure on me. I remember always not liking that, breaking lots of the rules. I got in trouble a lot. I was a good kid, but within the code of conduct for the church, there was things that I broke. Being a normal teenager with like a normal libido, for instance, and a boyfriend
Yeah. Yeah.
are hella strict when it comes to physical intimacy, shall we
Yeah.
say, before marriage.
Yeah.
And I, yes, would break some of those rules. And so I was constantly being disciplined,
Mm,
which added another layer of pressure and unhappiness to my
mm.
experience within the church. And I just remember always, once I got into high school, really wanting to leave and being very curious about what it would mean to at least live outside of Utah or Arizona. I sometimes thought that I would stay in the church, but I at least wanted to go to another state for
Yeah.
college. I was just curious about what that would be like and looked forward to it too. I had, of course, the romantic idea about going to New York and living
Oh, yeah.
in a big city. Then when it comes time for college, my parents won't pay for anything except going to BYU.
Oh,
And they tell me this for the very first time when I'm a senior. in high school
Mm.
and already having filled out applications for other colleges.
Oh, wow.
And so for the first time, yes, I'm told this is your option. Stay at home or go to BYU. Staying at
Oh,
home wasn't an option. I had to get out of that house. I knew that. So, yes, I end up at BYU. And I mean, talk about a backlash on my parents, because if that it was absolutely the beginning of the end as far as my involvement in the church goes.
oh,
Just as
wow.
strict as living at home. And the culture of surveillance there is really strong. People monitoring each other, telling on each
Oh,
other. I
wow.
was getting in trouble for little things all of the time. I was enormously depressed. I was cutting, and a lot of kind of the typical things that a very depressed young woman does.
Mhm.
I It got to the point with my mental health where I'm in a lot of trouble, like in the red zone, as far as got to get some help or I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And that was when I decided to drop out. And instead of really being concerned or providing me any amount of support to get better, yeah, like my parents were just furious with me.
So what
Wouldn't
did
let
you
me.
do when you dropped out then? Where did you go?
I happened to get a job at a restaurant, and I became friends with one of my coworkers, moved in with her.
Who was
I,
non-Mormon?
yes. Mhm. I was 19, paying rent on my own for the first time, experimenting with normal adult things for the first time. I floundered around. My parents wouldn't let me stay in their house because of
Yeah.
dropping out. So I floundered around, but I always wanted to get an education and study. I've always been very academic. So when I got together with the man I would end up marrying, he also was very ambitious and intelligent. And in college, I ended up getting back. I went to Arizona State
Nice.
and ended up having a wonderful experience. So I eventually pulled myself together enough to get back into things. It was
Well,
very challenging. I've not had a good relationship with my family since then. It was very confusing to navigate being outside of the church,
yeah.
very. And so I really did not end things amicably with my
Mm.
husband. We pretty much hated each other by the time the marriage was over.
Man.
However, if it wasn't for him, I'm not sure what I would have done. Leaving the church was so shattering, but I really had no choice. I lost all of my friends, all of my inheritance too.
Oh,
My
wow.
parents took from me, and I'm not really sure where it went.
Oh, man.
And so it was also, yeah, just devastating. And he really saw me through it. He had grown up around a lot of Mormons, and so thought what I was doing was really brave and cool, because he had also never known anyone to leave the church.
Yeah.
And so I'm really thankful that I was with him at the time of my life. I was with him. Mhm.
What was the most shocking thing for you when you started realizing, when you left the church and you started realizing what the real world out here is like? What was the most shocking thing to you?
I think coming to understand the dysfunction and the corruption of the Mormon church and the leadership, and for the first time really getting an understanding of that. I completely disavow the LDS faith. I honor and respect and look back on some parts of our culture and smile and even practice in a way. So I think it's a very quirky way to be raised, and it's a very quirky culture for sure. But as far as the structure of the LDS church goes, yeah, I just disavow them. And also, I was really shocked how my parents were encouraged to treat me. I know that they were told by our local leader, we call them the bishop, to disinherit me, and they wouldn't let me see my siblings unless I went to the house. And that also was really shocking.
Yeah. Has any of your siblings left?
Not that I know of.
Not that you're aware.
I've been estranged for 2 years now.
Yeah.
After leaving, I actually tried to stay on good standing with my
Yeah.
family and thought, even though I'm leaving, I really had no desire to leave my family.
Right.
But then when my parents came over one night and told me that they were taking away my inheritance and I wasn't going to have any way to pay for college and they weren't going to support me anymore, I we became estranged at that point, and then we've gone back and forth ever since. And then I made the choice 2 years ago to cut it off, probably for the last time.
I'm
So, like
sorry.
I said, thank you. It's been a journey, girl. Like,
Nobody wants to be estranged from their family, right? Like,
no, absolutely not.
it's so hard. I think it's so hard to have boundaries with family and really stay true to yourself with family. It's a lot easier to do with friends and even sometimes significant others and stuff like that. But family is so hard. And like I said, I don't think anybody wants to be estranged from them. And that's a huge loss, right? A huge loss that
Yes.
you have to grieve.
Yes, and it was really hard the first year, especially, and coming to terms with the fact that this is really, I have no option really for my own well-being to separate myself from these people. And also sitting back and realizing that they have no care in the world for you, which some people push back upon and say that they must. And also, I don't believe that they have love for me, which people are really uncomfortable when I say that. They must. They're your parents. They must. And it's just because you're related to someone doesn't just inherently mean that they have love for you.
Yeah.
And I do not feel that they do. Anytime
Mm.
I spent time with them, it would take me weeks to recover. you know,
Oh.
they live in Utah. I would go and visit all of the time. I would come back so messed up that
Mm.
I didn't have, support. I wasn't going to therapy at the time. And the things that they did to me over the years were unfathomable. During the pandemic, for instance, they had a family reunion. Everyone's living in Utah. I was here in Colorado, and don't even tell me. Take a
Oh.
family picture, put it in a cookbook, and send it to me for Christmas.
They sent it to you? That's just like
Yep.
a throw it
It
in your
was,
face situation.
and for what reason, too? I wasn't really on bad terms with them. Things like that, just for years and
I'm
years.
so
And then
sorry.
finally, everything came to a head 2 years ago with
Yeah.
something that occurred. And I was like, I got to get out of this. This is destroying me.
Oh, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. That's so much loss to what a hard decision to decide to leave the church to begin with, because you're going to lose everything, right? You hope not, I'm sure. I'm sure there, like you said, there was a part of you that thought I can still be a part of my family. I can still be a part of my friends.
Right.
But what a terrifying thing at such a young age too, to have that happen and then have your family basically disown you because of their religious beliefs. That's got to be so hard. And I'm
It
sure
still is. It's the
yeah,
best decision I ever made. I think we all have some sort of challenge in our life that's an opportunity for us to grow, something for us to overcome,
yeah.
something maybe that shapes us. Being born into this family and into this religion was definitely the thing that the universe handed me. And also keep in mind, 20 years ago, nobody was leaving. I'm not sure if you're aware, but now people are running out of that religion like crazy. And there's,
Yeah.
infrastructures in place and resources and podcasts. And I
Mhm.
run a local chapter of a pretty much worldwide nonprofit that is just set up to support people leaving the Mormon church.
Mm.
There wasn't anything like this when I left. And not to toot my own horn, it was just a lot. And I'm really thankful now that people have a place to go when they leave. And it's an honor to support them.
That's
And it's
amazing.
very gratifying to see people being like, I'm out. This religion's whack.
So
So
crazy.
I do enjoy that for sure. But it was, yeah, not like this when I left.
Yeah. How
I
do
did
you
not know
feel?
one person that had left the faith.
That's so interesting. Yeah. How do you feel when you see like documentaries and stuff on the Mormon church? Is it pretty spot on for the most part?
Yeah, I think sometimes that they don't portray how strict it really is.
Okay.
The
They play it
upbringing.
down?
Yeah, I think so, especially with some of the more recent ones, Housewives of Salt Lake and Mormon Wives or whatever the most recent one is. I believe, yeah, that it's not showing exactly how stifling it is and how strict and some of the rules that were made to follow. Furthermore, the church is relaxed in so many areas
Mm,
because so many
because of the
people are
pushback.
leaving. There's this crazy thing now. A lot of people will be aware of our magic underwear that
Yes.
we wear.
Yes.
Yeah. And they've just now changed the rules so that the garments is what we call them only cover the shoulder,
Hmm.
a bit of the shoulder. So now you're able to wear tank tops. And growing up,
Oh,
you couldn't show, you had to have things down to your knee, a dress or shorts, which growing up in Arizona, wearing
hot as
jeans
hell.
all year long, and my parents would scrutinize every little thing I wore. It was very hard as a teenager to go into my parents' room and have them completely looking to see if like certain parts of your shoulder were showing or if your clavicle was
Mhm.
showing or how short something was, and actually kneeling on the ground and making sure your skirt goes all the way to the ground. It was just sometimes hell. And now to find out that they're letting people wear tank tops, first of all, what the heck? And second, if this doesn't show people that the leaders are not divinely inspired and that things can change whenever, come on. They just don't want people to leave anymore.
Oh, that's super interesting. How does that make you feel now, knowing what you went through and what they were like back then, and then knowing that it took all these people leaving and you leaving in order for those things to start changing? I think it's always probably a good thing to be a part of that change, but also, are you a little bit angry about it too? I
Very
think,
more than a little.
okay.
More than a little. They're completely corrupt. I don't know how people stay in it,
Yeah.
to be honest. Yeah, yeah, angry for sure.
Just thinking back to like you having to endure all of those rules and things and the strictness of it, and then to have them be like, okay, just kidding, you can show your shoulders now,
They
like like what
absolutely
the hell?
disgust me. They do. Yeah, they
Yeah,
absolutely disgust me. The leadership's completely corrupt.
that's
I
interesting.
mean,
It's
they
so
still
crazy.
have a lot of the social dysfunction as well. They're very homophobic, which is one of
Mhm.
the main reasons people leave. Very sexist, lots of racist undertones. But
Mm,
some of these like day-to-day things that they're changing in order to make it more
look
comfortable or
better.
more normal do make me angry, because this was something that controlled every aspect of my life growing up, and it was an unhappy childhood. I'm
Mm,
sorry to say, but
yeah.
really it was. I look back and feel sorry for the woman and the girl who was trying so hard to be a good Mormon, but also do her own thing at the same time, because it wasn't like that at all.
I think it's really cool though that you were called to do your own thing, as hard as that might have been. Like you definitely stayed true to yourself all the way through. And even if you gave some pushback on the rules and stuff, you got out and now you're doing your own thing and look how amazing you are.
Yeah,
So
I'm at least someone who's always followed her heart. That's for
yeah,
darn sure.
that's amazing. Okay, so let's shift into dating and divorce and all of those things. I wanted to tell you, I had a guest on some of my earlier episodes, a friend of mine who is currently going through a divorce, and she did make a comment about the lack of support and resources that are out there
Give
currently.
her my
So,
number. I
yeah,
work with
I
people on
absolutely. Yeah, I'm just curious. Yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting. She said you try to Google something and it's everybody's situation is so different and so unique that it's tough to find the support and stuff. But
It
Yeah.
is, every relationship is different, and therefore every breakup is different.
Yeah.
But still, there are tried and true things that can help you through it. And that's why a coach is so useful, because when you're devastated, plus a divorce is one of the stressful things that a person can go through in their lifetime. When you're in the middle of that and your nervous system is super activated, and it's so hard to see what you might be able to do and where you might be able to shift to make things easier or help you heal. And a coach comes in and helps you to uncover those blind spots or what new thing you can try, plus supporting you every step of the way.
Yeah. So you went through your divorce and then you said you went through the abusive breakup. And then how long after that did you start doing your coaching?
After my breakup, after I fled my abuser, actually,
Mhm.
I had, as I said, not maintained my friendships. And keep in mind, I was only with him for a year and a half. And when I left, I had hardly any friends left. And my family was fed up with it as well, offered me no support whatsoever. However, I didn't have anywhere else to go. And so even though I wasn't on very good terms with my parents, I ended up staying there for a short amount
Okay.
of time. I almost, not almost, several times staying there with them for only a few months, wish that I hadn't left and thought about going back to him, because
Oh,
it was
wow.
so horrible. And just the blaming me for what had happened and being frustrated with me for going to them for help. And he was an alcoholic. You knew this. Why did you stay with him? And now you're coming to us for help. But I was so messed up. I developed some like weird eating disorder when I was with him.
Mhm.
And I would tell them, I don't feel like I can even take care of myself right now. Like, I need a little bit more time. Stop asking me when I'm getting my own apartment.
Oh.
Yeah, it was bad. I had an opportunity. I'm a freelance writer as well, if anyone needs support.
Mhm.
And I had a client an American client who was living in Australia. She asked if I wanted to come over for a month to help her with a project. I had to get out of that house. I said yes, end up going to Australia just randomly.
What part of
And
Australia were you in?
I'm from Melbourne,
Okay. I
or
lived
I
in
lived in.
Sydney for a year.
Where did you go?
I lived in Sydney for a year, forever ago, but
I 1 month turned into 5 years. And the thing is, being an immigrant in Australia, it's hella hard. People have approached me about how to do it, and I've said I will have no advice other than to not even try.
oh, wow.
And you end up living this life, at least I did, where you're completely reliant on external
Interesting.
resources. For instance, I had a student visa at one point, but that means that you have to find a school that takes student people on student visas. That's really expensive. You have to go full
Mhm.
time. That ended up not working out for me. Then I thought about getting a partner visa with someone. That takes years to get.
Oh,
You have to
wow.
stay with the person the whole time. You have to do all these things to prove the relationship. That ended up not working out for me. Then I got a work sponsorship. That ended up being one of the worst decisions I've ever made.
Oh,
And so I pretty much lived maybe 4 of the 5 years I was over there in a lot of chaos. And I really wanted to go to coaching school, but I was just never in the position to do
mm.
it. The visas take all the money you'll ever make as well. And so
Well, that's
anytime I
it.
had any savings, I would turn around and use it to pay for all these applications.
Yeah,
It's
that's just it.
crazy.
And then if you get denied and you have to reapply, you have to pay the
Yep.
fee again. I went on a working holiday visa when I was quite young. And then we stayed for about a year. I'm a hairdresser, so I worked at a salon, but there was a salon that I wanted a job at so bad in downtown Sydney. And it was like, it would have been a great next step for my career. I could have learned so much. It would have been awesome, but the guy would not hire me unless I had a more permanent visa because I just had the working holiday visa. And he kept posting throughout the year that I was there, he kept posting jobs and I kept being like applying, and he'd call me or his assistant would call me and be like, have you changed your visa status? And I'm like,
You
no,
can't even do that. You
if
you
he
have to get
sponsored me,
sponsored.
maybe, but
Yeah,
he wasn't
that's not even
offering
a
that.
thing. They probably didn't realize, but it doesn't work that way at all.
And even with the working holiday visas, in order to get a second year working holiday visa, you have to go work the farms too and get a farmer, like you have to pick fruit or whatever, and you have to have a farmer sign off so you can get a second working holiday visa. The managers of my salon were from England. And they were trying to get their second year, and they ended up just paying off a farmer saying that they worked there for their 3 months and then got their second working holiday. And I think they're actually still there. So I don't know how they did it, but it could be different
I
for
don't know how
British
they would. Yeah,
citizens
but
too versus Americans. But yeah,
it's
crazy.
all there's all sorts of sketchy stuff that goes on for people to get these visas. I knew someone who was working at a restaurant and not even getting paid in return
Mm.
for them to sponsor her.
Oh,
When I got my work
wow.
sponsorship, I had to pay for the applications, even though they signed things saying that they're going to cover all of the costs. I had to pay them back part of my salary. They ended up deciding not to do it. I'm not sure all the reasons. And then in order to let me go, did all these really, yeah, shady things, including hacking
Yeah.
my Facebook account
Oh
and
my gosh.
which they never denied that they did it. And looking through all of my messages,
Oh my
trying to find
gosh.
something to use against me, which they did because I was so unhappy at that job that my friends would and I would
Talk about it.
talk a lot of smack about the owner.
And I
And
don't know how long ago you were there, but probably international phone plans aren't exactly cheap or anything. So I don't know if you were just talking to American friends that,
no, friends who knew her and knew about the situation.
oh,
And
okay.
she goes in there and sees all these horrible things that
Mm.
I'm saying about her and turns around and says that she's heard that I've been talking smack about her and that, she's not going to tolerate it. And it made no sense to me. Some of the things that she had heard that I was saying about her, I'm like, my friends would never repeat that. And of course, she was horrible at covering her tracks because I realized pretty immediately that she must have gotten it from my messages. And
Oh,
yeah, I go and
wow.
look at my login history and she's completely logged into my account.
Oh my gosh. That's so crazy. Okay. So
Yeah,
what
it
happened
was.
after that?
So yeah, I really had no choice but to leave the job. They more or less fired me, and I ended up suing them for
Wow.
unlawful or unfair termination. Ended up winning. There was all the proof in the world that what they did was sketchy. But because of that, I was left with no income at all. I was completely shattered that something I'd worked so hard for years didn't work out because this person was in my social network. They were able to spread lots of lies, half truths about my performance at the job and the fact that I'd sued them and that I was the vindictive one. So I ended up losing a lot of my friends too. So I'm just a shell of a person at this
Hmm.
point. But as I said, it also gave me the opportunity to look back on my life and decide once and for all that I wasn't going to live that way anymore. And I ended up spending a lot of time on my own, getting a house sit down by the beach and
Hmm.
just deciding what I was going to do to be self-reliant for the first time. And I realized after 5 years of not getting the visa that it was, yeah, time to move on and that it wasn't meant to be. And like I said, didn't want to live that way anymore. So
Yeah.
saved up my money, got an under the table job as a nanny, and then, yeah, came back to America. Denver ticked a lot of the boxes as far as where I'd want to live and what I'd want in a city.
Yeah.
Came here, didn't know anyone, and yeah, just built up a life that now I love. It
You're
was
so
taking time
great.
on my own. Thank you. Taking time on my own. And when I say time on my own, days without even talking to someone, being my
Mm.
own best company, really isolated, but wanting to be, because I learned so much about myself. I was a
Yeah.
little untrusting of people too for a while because of everything that had
I
gone down.
mean,
But
yeah.
the personal development that it provided me became intoxicating. So I
Mm.
just kept it going for a while. Ultimately, after the pandemic, I started meeting a lot of people here. I have a wonderful life, very socially robust. And yeah, I got there in the end, is what I say.
Oh, I love that. So tell me what people work with you and what it looks like to work with you as a dating and breakup coach. Yeah, tell me a little bit about that.
I work with singles who are trying to navigate the single life and loving it as much as I do. I'm not single anymore, but I was for a while. And people who are in various stages of breakups. Sometimes people who are in the middle of one or approaching one, and yeah, providing them support to get through it and the hurdles that come with a divorce, and people who have been months, sometimes even years, believe it or not, and just not quite able to shake it.
Mm,
And I provide a framework for doing it, a framework for giving yourself closure, a framework for simply just getting through the day. I have a 3-month program, and that's what we do the first month, is just examining your routine and your schedule and how you're currently living, and where we can make adjustments so that just getting through the day
mm,
becomes more easeful. And then coming to acceptance about the breakup and figuring out what's next and building a life that is better because of your breakup. And I have pretty much almost 100% success. I help people also who are trying to go, quote, no contact with their partners or with
mm.
their exes, excuse me, because I do think that's the most effective way to heal, the time plus the no contact plus the effort. So I help people with that as well. And like I say, putting your breakup in your rear view mirror.
Mm. It's so hard, right? Because it's got to be scary when your whole
Yeah.
world kind of flips upside down like that. And whether it's a divorce from a long-term marriage and there's kids involved and all that, or just a long-time relationship with a partner, yeah, that's got to
And
be terrifying to not know what's next. And that's been your life for so long.
yeah, shattering because you're losing someone, and then yeah, not knowing what's next, and because really the reality in the future that you thought you had you is gone now. And
Yeah.
that can be scary for people and really heartbreaking too. You look forward to doing things and building a life with your partner, and then when you realize that's no longer how it works, it's devastating and hard to navigate. I help people build a future that you will love regardless if you're in a relationship or not, so that maybe the next time something happens, you still have the reality that you thought because you built it on your own.
Yeah. Do you find that people, I'm just curious about this, is my own curious question. Do you find that people tend to gravitate towards similar types of people they dated in the past? Or do you like, I feel like you have to do a lot of healing around that relationship in order to not find the same type of person and find somebody that's better for you.
Absolutely, especially when it comes to patterns of toxicity
Mm,
in the relationships and type of people who aren't maybe that great to them. And that's also something that we do often in the 3rd month, is love mapping, for instance, looking at all of your relationships and the things that they had in common, and then thinking about what your red flags in the future might be, what
mm,
you are actually looking for, what your boundaries are. And then some people want to date again. A lot of people are so jazzed about being single that they don't. But helping people who do want to date again to go at it slowly and do it differently this
yeah.
time around. And sometimes people come to me just for dating again, coaching, and it is really fun.
Yeah. You like doing that?
Yeah, I love it. Mhm.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I feel like I've known people in the past who have jumped out of one relationship and right back into another. And do you think that's because the dating world is scary and being single and alone is scary to people?
Yes, absolutely. A lot of people, we would call that serial monogamous. And that is when you go from relationship to relationship. It can be really uncomfortable for people to be single and be on their own and travel alone
Mm,
and do things by yourself. A lot of people have no experience with that. One
mm.
of my specialties is overcoming loneliness.
Oh,
And that is because I've seen people go into new relationships so quickly because they feel lonely and they can't handle it. They don't know how to handle it and how uh, wonderful it can be. And so, yes, I absolutely do think that's what compels people to go from relationship to relationship. And it's unfortunate because it is so much fun being single. And once you can overcome loneliness and then realize that you can do everything on your own, you don't need a partner for any reason. And then when you're able to go out into the world as a happy single person, I mean, you can do anything. And
yeah.
that's not only very empowering for people, it boosts your confidence astronomically
Mm,
when you realize that you don't need a partner for anything. And then once you do start dating again, you attract better people because you're
yeah.
confident and you know what you're worth and you're able to walk away quicker if something doesn't feel right or if there is a red flag because you know you're okay on your own. So why stay in a bad situation?
Yeah, I love that. Do you think there's a lot of codependency out there in relationships?
I think there's lots of enmeshment in relationships and people really building their lives around each other.
Mhm.
And that doesn't make for a good relationship. The healthiest thing you can do is each have a full life apart. And so when you come together, you can enjoy each other's company and yeah, realize too that you don't need each other to do things. You get along better as well when you're not
Mhm.
so enmeshed because you're already full and complete on your own.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I see a bit of codependence, which really I think is understood. It's a lot about
Yeah.
enabling someone else's bad behavior.
Yeah.
I see it a bit and I can recognize it because that's why I stayed with an alcoholic,
Yeah.
was enabling him and hoping that I was just going to get love and good
Mm.
treatment in return. But there's more, I would say, in enmeshment, which is
Okay.
just completely, like I said, building a life around each other and the relationship and not doing much without the partner.
Which then in turn makes it so much more traumatizing when it ends, right?
Yes, completely.
Where if you have that your own interests, life, hobbies, whatever, then you're like, okay, this sucks, but I'm still me and I can go out there and
Yeah.
still live
If
my life.
Yes, exactly. And that's why I want people to learn the joy of being single because not only, like I said, it boosts your confidence. If you go through another breakup, you recover so much faster and than you would otherwise. I went through a breakup a year and a half ago and it hurt so much
Mhm.
to walk away from this person and say goodbye for sure, but I was like 2 weeks back in the groove of things.
Mm.
Somebody asked me or said, "Oh, it must be really hard to follow your own advice." They had known I went through a breakup. And I said, "Not at all, because I know that it works. It's not
Yeah.
difficult." And I did everything that I preach. And it was a lot easier and less devastating than my previous breakups.
Yeah. I heard the term one time, single shaming. Is that a thing?
Yes, or we also call it singleism. I
Okay.
am really involved in the what we call the solo community, which is people all over the world who are happy being single and do not see either a future with a partner or do not strive for that or really desperately look for it. And so we're very happy on our own. We don't do what's called riding the relationship escalator, which is the various stages that people expect when you're growing a relationship, dating, becoming exclusive, moving in together, eventually marriage. And we talk about singleism all the time. In fact, one of the people who's really high up, his name is Dr. Peter McGraw. He wrote the book Solo. He's actually a personal friend of mine.
Okay.
And he believes that married people have 1,000 more benefits than single people.
Oh.
So, yes. And a lot, as far as single shaming goes, a lot of people who ask when you're going to date, ask when you're going to be in a relationship, don't accept that you're very happy without one. It is a real thing.
I think a lot of people don't admit it to themselves either because it's such a cultural based kind of thing. I imagine I've struggled with infertility for many years. And so and then I have friends who have chosen not to have kids in their life. And I feel like it's probably a similar thing to that. I can't talk on the single side of it because, like I said, I've been with my husband since high school, but I feel like it's probably similar where we're conditioned mentally in our society to get married, have a family, and do all these things. And when you don't do that, a lot of women who have chosen not to have children get so much pushback from society on, oh, why? You're missing out. You don't have love. You don't have all this stuff. It's
Selfish,
crazy.
yes.
Like, you're
Selfish as well.
selfish. Yeah. One of my really good friends who decided to walk away from fertility treatment, I'm living child-free life and I'm doing it the best. And somebody told her she was selfish. And so I imagine it's similar in that regard because we are so conditioned in our society to have a partner, spend your life with that partner, whether that's married or just being together. So I feel so bad for people who I don't feel bad. I hope they're living their best lives. The single for life people, I love that.
Yeah.
For
Single
them.
by choice. It is a very positive community. We have an online community that's very active, and people, yes, definitely living their best lives. And there's a lot of support. I don't think people realize that this is an entire movement. If you're out there and enjoying being single, or this is your chapter in life, just Google solo community, Google Dr. Peter McGraw. There are people all around the world who are rooting each other on and knowing that they made the right choice for them.
Love that. You have your 3-month program. Do you do one-on-one coaching as well?
That's what I do. Yes. It's a one-on-one 3 month,
Okay.
3-monther.
Okay. But you wouldn't do like a one-off. I know it's a process to get through this stuff.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I do offer one-offs that people do find effective, but it's a longer process. And I think 3 months is really the soft spot as far as completely not only putting it behind you, but there's also an aspect of the coaching, as I mentioned, that's about what's next and building your new life. And this all takes time. And so I do prefer the 3-month programs.
Yeah, for sure. We can link, do you have a website? I think you have a website.
Yes. And also I do. Yes. But also if somebody is listening to this and it's resonating with you, if you could link to how they can sign up for a free intro call.
Oh, yeah.
Let's just do it. Sign up. I can let you know how this is going to completely change your life and your healing journey. And yeah, let's get started.
What advice would you give here at the end to someone who is, let's say, facing a breakup, divorce, or right in the midst of it, that's just in the ick of all of it? What advice would you give for them at this point in time?
First of all, own your decision. If it was, and if it wasn't, try to get to the point where you can accept that it really is over. It's painful to do, but it will help you a lot. And I really do believe in the no contact rule. I feel that it's, as far as interacting, engaging with your ex, especially during the healing journey, that it is the only way is no interaction. I would really encourage people to take that route. And that includes not looking at their social media anymore, not going back and looking at old messages. I consider that to be engagement. And it's hard. I know that it is. It's sometimes the most challenging for people in the beginning, but it's going to help you the most. I'm positive. I've
What
never
about
seen it not work.
Yeah. What about people with kids in that situation, though? Because they
Yeah.
usually have to have some type of contact with that, right?
This is one of the most common questions, and there are definitely ways and things that I suggest to lower contact to an absolute bare
Yeah.
minimum. And I have several suggestions on how to do that. And yes, some engagement for sure, but to the point that it's such a little amount or such a small amount that you'll be able to heal and then set a precedent for a future in which the engagement is so low that you don't make each other crazy.
Yeah. Awesome.
And I do encourage that as well. Do have as little contact as possible.
Yeah.
With
Thank you for sharing all of that. Do you have anything else you want to say? Any other parting words for listening, for our listeners out there?
if you are going through a breakup, I understand how hard it is, and I'm sending you so much strength.
And you're there for them if they need it, right?
1,000%. Yes. I love supporting people.
I love that. Thank you so much for being a guest. This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you for sharing your childhood, your family stories, and your dating stories, and your Australia story. It was amazing. I really enjoyed this conversation. Yeah, so
Me
thank you
too.
so much.
You're very welcome. I enjoyed it as well.
And again, we'll link everything in the show notes. So if anybody wants to get a hold of Janice, just check that out. And it sounds like working with her would be super helpful if you're in that situation.
But fun as well. So yeah, hit me up,
Yeah.
everyone.
It's not all just sad and and healing.
Not at all.
Fun
Not
too.
at all.
Yeah. Love that. All right. Thank you for listening, and we will see y'all on the next episode.